What's up guys, welcome back to the channel, hope you're doing well. Okay, let's do a recap of week 10 of the marathon train so far. Week 10 was the recovery week of the endurance / lactate threshold train block, and it took place from the 17th of July to the 23rd of July. So Monday was just a bit of rest, a bit of walking. That's where I also do my strength work and also some plyometrics as well. Tuesday was a 14k general aerobic run. I did it at Salt Pan Creek. It's quite foggy that morning and a bit slippery in the boardwalks, but I went okay. On the way back up, I did a little bit of detour to check out Riverwood a bit more, and yeah, went pretty smoothly I guess. Wednesday was a VO2 max or / interval session. I haven't done intervals since before I started this marathon training program. So the last time I did it was probably early May. It felt a bit rusty but quite refreshing as well to do some speed work. It was supposed to be 14 Ks in total with 6 by 800 meters at 5k race pace and with about 2 minutes of recovery jog in between each interval rep. So I did like a 3.5k warm-up jog to get to the spot that I do my intervals at, and then I did the intervals itself, and then I did like a 3.5k's cool down on the way back. Decided to do the intervals at Riverwalk alongside Parramatta River. There's like heaps of headwind, like it's quite windy. Overall a pretty decent session, went pretty fast. So I was wearing my speed freeze for the interval session, and I did notice that it didn't feel quite as responsive as I expected or what I'm used to in the past. Maybe I've done too many long runs recently and I forgot what intervals felt like, but yeah, it didn't feel like my speed freeze was going as fast as it could have. Like I'm not really sure. It's just something I wanted to point out I guess. And then in the evening I decided to run with Rhodes Runners. This time it was like a modified course intended for a bit of like hill training for the upcoming City to Surf race in August. So instead of the usual 10k course, it was 11k's instead, and this time it featured another very hilly street called Princess Street. I think it's like 600 meters in total with like 7% incline before heading down to the usual course, which featured like Dyson Street as well, which is like around 150 meters with about 7% incline I'm guessing. So two pretty big hilly streets I guess. I was thinking like just to go into this Wednesday evening run, treat like a little recovery run since I already did like an interval session that morning, but it didn't really go that way because normally my recovery runs go much slower and usually I just do on flat surfaces or like on grass sometimes. So I felt quite tired throughout, and then for whatever reason my running buddy Morgan and I decided to go pretty quick for the last 1.6k's along the Rhodes foreshore. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with that evening's run to check out the hills and stuff, but I think it wasn't a good idea overall because afterwards, late in the evening, my left calf got kind of strained. Yeah. So Thursday was supposed to be a 10k recovery run, but I skipped it because of Wednesday's evening run. My left calf was still feeling a bit sore that day, and yeah, I didn't do much in terms of running at all. Just some walking here, there, and a bit of foam rolling and stretching in the evening. So Friday was an 18k medium long run. Even though I was feeling mostly okay again in terms of my calf strain, I decided to take a bit easier than usual. Went to Lippy Park, ran into Morgan again like 3k's in. He just started his like, first few k's of his morning run I guess. So we did like 9k's together. I followed his lead for a bit and just to discover some new routes around Wentworth Point. And then I did the last 6 kilometers solo. The calf didn't feel too bad at the start and throughout the run, but I think towards the end it started like kind of like feeling a bit sore again. So like later evening did a bit of like foam rolling and stretching, and that kind of helped as well. Saturday was supposed to be a general aerobic run plus some speed work at the end, which I normally do at Rhodes Park Run or some kind of park run, right? But this time I did some volunteering, so this time I was the timekeeper for the park run. It's kind of nervous since it's my first time doing timekeeping I guess, and it's kind of like a big responsibility. Fortunately it went pretty well overall because I had a pretty good team with me at the finish line I guess. And then after the park run, which is about like an hour or so of like standing still just like keeping time I guess, I finally got stuck into my run, which is supposed to be like around 13k's of general aerobic runs and then 8 reps of hills and then 8 reps of like strides. This time I ran with Morgan again for like around 14k's around Meadowbank and then Newington and then back to Rhodes. Felt quite sluggish throughout because yeah, we were just mostly standing around the whole time I guess. Then I did the speed work section at the end solo. It was like 8 by 50 meter hill reps and like 8 by 100 meter strides. Those went fairly okay, but my calf kind of felt a bit sore again at the end. Sunday was a 24k medium long run. For whatever reason I felt like going down Two Valley Trail. I haven't been down there in a few years actually. So I started at Campsie and went all the way to Tempe via the Cooks River Cycleway, which is about 8k's total, and then at Tempe that's sort of where you start the trails I guess. That's about 6k's in total. I was wearing my Rebels and I don't know if it was a good idea to take it down trails, but somehow we held on. The trails are quite overgrown since I last went there, which is like probably a few years ago. Yeah, I pretty much walked and jogged at most of the trail sections. And then I did the last 10k's back home from Bexley North, which is like at the end of the Two Valley Trail, I guess, via the M5 Linear Park. I was always curious about the M5 Linear Park whenever I finished the Two Valley Trail back then, as a way to get home, because like the M5 does run past Bankstown. There's two sides to the shared pathway and it's wide, and there's like a bunch of playgrounds and like interesting underpasses throughout. There's only a few minor roads to cross. There's probably like one major road to cross. You always go over a bridge to get there and that kind of stuff. It then links back to Riverwood and Salt Pan Creek. And overall, it was a very cool route, and I guess a nice trip down memory lane in terms of going on Two Valley Trail. That brings the total mileage to around 98 kilometers this week. We're supposed to be 93 k's, but should be fine, I guess. I'm still taking care of my calf strain at the moment. Hopefully it recovers well soon. As I record this video, it's mostly recovered at this point. It doesn't seem like anything serious for now, but I am a bit nervous because the following week is going to be a big week again, about 113 k's weekly mileage, so I got to be careful. I also want to quickly talk about running injuries in general and like how I approach it and how I feel better and what I do to like reduce my risk of injury and what I do when I do get injured, I guess. So before I started this whole running thing, I'd already had a few leg related injuries. Like for example, I banged the arch of my right foot running up the stairs when I was a kid, massive bruising and couldn't walk for a week. I had like a deep laceration in my right big toe from cracked tiles in a swimming pool. Needed some stitching, and yeah, it was pretty serious. I also had ITB syndrome. I think it's because I was trained too much in the gym back then, like too much volume and intensity, and I didn't know much about strengthening, mobility, and like recovery in general. Couldn't walk for a week. There's a bit of swelling on my the side of my knee, and I don't think I did enough rehabilitation exercises to like get better from that. So it never really fully healed from back then. Also banged my left shin on the ledge of a wall once. Couldn't walk properly for like a week and a half. Luckily, I don't think any fractures occurred. There's probably a few more injuries I've probably missed, but fortunately, none of these injuries really impacted my running performance that much. Now, ever since I started running, like 3 years ago, I've been injured a few times, I think, but nothing too serious. Like, so for example, shin splints, this rarely happens, but it's when I wear like really old shoes with high stack and really tight lacing and for long runs. Pretty much that combo. I don't know why. Probably happened like 2 or 3 times in the past, but it's nothing too serious. It usually heals the next day or two after I like do some like massage ball rolling on the bottom of my feet. I think it's because, yeah, old shoes in general, my form breaks down towards the last second half of a long run, for example, when I get tired, but I'm not really sure why it happens. I did have tight hamstrings a few times in the past. Nothing too serious, but it did go on for a while. I think it's because I used to train at netball courts, and I used to have like interval sessions there, and like I did like repetitions around the netball courts, like a square loop, I guess. I used to go fast at the sharp corners, and I kept going the same direction as well, like clockwise. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I suspect it's that. And then it went on for a while until I did some like strength exercises and added more variation in my running routes, and like I stopped doing those intervals in squares, I guess. Rolled ankles, I've only gone this a few times, but it's usually on grass. Like it's when I run on grass and like I wear like high stack shoes and I don't pay attention to the ground. There's like little holes in the ground, and sometimes I just roll my ankle on it. Usually that's nothing too serious. It goes away in a day or two, and I always like get away with it by like rolling a massage ball under my feet, I guess. I feel like I should just go barefoot or maybe wear like a lower stack shoe whenever I'm on grass in future. I've had sore Achilles. This happened like a month or 2 ago as part of this marathon training. Happened because I was wearing my Saucony Triumph 20s down the trail, so like a high stack shoe on the trails. Honestly, I'm not really sure what happened or what caused it, but it was nothing too serious. It's more like a strain or like a little soreness, and it went away in a few days after like a bit of like foam rolling, light stretching, and like massage ball under my feet. Yeah, I feel like having a high stack shoe on the trails isn't that great for me personally. It hasn't happened again since I've worn my like lower stack shoes. And also like a sore calf, like, so this is pretty recent, you know, Wednesday evening. Not really sure why I got it, but again, I suspect it's from like doing like too much in a day, I guess. Like I did intervals in the morning and then like a very hilly run with a fast finish in the evening. I feel like I could have avoided that if I didn't do that second run in the evening. Yeah, lesson learned. Doesn't feel like anything serious, but it has resurfaced doing the rest of the runs of the week. It's recovering fairly well for now, and a bit of like foam rolling and light stretching seems to do the job, I guess. There's also a few times where I've come close to developing an injury, including blisters. I used to get blisters at the bottom of my foot when I ran in wet weather and didn't like have a proper lockdown in the shoe. So my foot was always like starting around and rubbing against my socks and my shoes. Ever since I used the runner's lip or the heel lock, I never really had blisters again. So yeah, that really helped. I did have a bit of hot spots and a bit of like metatarsal pain on my left foot when I was wearing my Saucony Triumph 20s for long runs. I think it's because I didn't buy the right size for that shoe. Yeah, I should have bought like an extra half size up or something. I've had like sore knees in the past a few times, and usually it's from not warming up properly before getting into a run, especially when on a cold day or like a rainy day. It happens at the start of the run and usually goes away like 10 minutes into runs. Since I noticed that, I was like, you know what, let's do like a proper warm-up, and then yeah, proper warm-up really helps for that, I guess. Anyways, when it comes to running and injuries, I think mindset and attitude is very important. I don't want to say injury is like inevitable and like gonna happen sooner or later, or even like it's like avoidable or like preventable entirely. It's not as simple as that. That's how I feel. I feel like rather than thinking, for example, I haven't been injured so far, so it's all good, which is quite reckless, or running seems quite risky and I'll get injured sooner or later, which can be like kind of self-limiting, I guess. Or even I'll just work through the injury and it's no big deal, which is quite reckless, and I'm pretty guilty of that recently. I'd rather see it as, if I want to achieve my goals in running and be in it for the long term, then I have to train smart and be consistent. And like, being consistent is really only possible if I don't get injured much or at all, basically. So this means I have to be pretty proactive in like staying on top of reducing the risk or chance of injury. And if injury does happen, then I have to manage it in a sensible way and like learn from it and be stronger moving forward, basically. You know, something like that. I'm not really sure if it's the best way to go about it, but yeah, that's pretty much my approach for now, I guess. Anyway, let's go through some of the ways that we can reduce the risk of injury. So the first one is probably like listen to your body. Part of reducing risk of injury is to be quite analytical, honest, and also reasonable with yourself. See how you feel whenever you go for a run. Like, take note of how you feel at various paces and routes and workouts, I guess. And if it helps, you can do some journaling or like note down your patterns of what you feel. Don't ignore signs of injury. Sometimes a bit of soreness isn't really an injury, but definitely keep an eye out for like consistent pain in a muscle or joint, I guess. Emphasize on good form and technique. This is kind of tough since everyone's body is a bit different. Everyone's biomechanics and running form is going to vary or be different in some way. You often hear some rules of thumb, such as like have high cadence and short strides, but I feel like the idea is to not overstride or overextend. There's also like stuff around foot strike. I feel like rather than focusing on not heel striking or not forefoot striking, just do what works for you. Others will say don't bounce up and down, like, you know, move forward. And also like keep your arms close to your body, elbows behind you as you run. No matter what your form looks like, the idea is you want to be efficient and have like good running economy with it. Definitely monitor stuff like breathing patterns and like, if possible, your heart rate. If you have like a smart running watch, that way you can like develop a more relaxed and comfortable running style, which you can sustain for longer, I guess, for all your runs. Definitely takes time and patience to like build a good running form, and oftentimes it's pretty hard to do alone. So yeah, it's good to have like a running coach or like, you know, some kind of feedback from like an expert or something. Definitely remember to warm up and cool down as well. A warm up is pretty important in getting your body and mind ready for the run. It usually consists of a bit like walking or light jogs, some dynamic movements, some muscle activation, and also like some running drills. And also a cool down, it helps return the body to the pre-run state as part of recovery. And this usually consists of like light jog, walking, maybe like stretching and foam rolling or whatever. Another one is stay alert and be pretty aware of your surroundings. Like when you're running, sometimes you gotta really check the ground for like cracks and like branches or like poop on the ground. And also be careful running during wet weather or like at night. It's hard to see, and like, you know, there's more hazards, I guess. Be on the lookout for like other pedestrians or runners or cyclists or people pushing their prams or people walking their dogs. Like, it's a shared pathway wherever you run. Run a variety of routes and terrains, I guess. Running on a flat surface all the time doesn't really train your body to be stronger or more resilient in general, I think. It does get pretty fast, but I feel like you should still mix up like some hills, some trails, or even like run on the track a few times. Overdoing one type of terrain or surface is going to impact recovery and might lead to more injury, especially hills. Starting and stopping quite often is not good either, I think. So like if you go run and you stop at a traffic light stop a lot of times, then I don't think it's great in your body. You might have to try different routes where you have less interruption if possible. People say like, you know, don't increase your weekly mileage by over 10% each week, something like that, right? Otherwise you might lead to like overtraining or overreaching, and then, you know, that's going to impact your performance and might lead to more injury because like you're feeling like worse off, I guess. Having a proper training plan really helps as well. This might mean you need like a running coach. Otherwise you can also self-coach if that's your thing, because having a proper training plan means you build towards a goal and like run a variety of paces and sessions with an appropriate train load, and that gets you fitter and more resilient over time. Recovery is pretty important too. Get enough sleep, have a good diet, stay hydrated, make sure you get like enough active rest or recovery in between the days that you don't run. And also massaging and foam rolling really helps too. I feel like you don't need to be super flexible or mobile when it comes to running, but I feel like it doesn't hurt to have it at all. So I feel like having a good range of motion and being strong in the various ranges of motion means that your body is strong enough to handle the motor patterns and also like movements required when running, I guess. Maybe it will help you to be more efficient and relaxed while running. I feel like strength training really helps with developing stronger joints and muscles, and having more solid muscles is also like having more padding for your joints as well to help you handle the forces of running and also sort of absorb the impact from the ground. And I feel like doing strength training also helps with building a more efficient running form. Make sure you work on your core strength as well. Really helps for running in terms of stability. You can also try some cross training, like for example, swimming, biking, or tennis. It's pretty much anything that's not too related to running. And this helps like reduce the chance of overuse injuries that can occur when you keep running and only run, you know what I mean? Be shoe smart. Make sure your shoes are fitted well, depending on like your foot profile, whether it comes to width or whether you need support. And having a shoe rotation really helps with getting different muscle stimulation and also reduces the chance of overuse and like underuse injuries, I guess. When you wear like high drop shoes, it's going to target more of the knees and the hips, and you wear like low drop shoes, it's going to target more of the lower legs, which is like going to be the calves and the ankles and the Achilles, that kind of stuff. Definitely replace your shoes when you feel like they're getting kind of worn out, I guess. People would say like, you know, retire your shoes at like around 500 kilometers. Maybe that's true, I'm not really sure, but if nothing else changes in your diet or your training or your recovery and you feel like you're getting sore for no reason, then you know, it might be the shoes, you know, so definitely keep an eye out for that. Okay, let's say you got injured from running. What are you gonna do now? Consult some professional help and get some physical therapy. For example, you have to go to a doctor or like an exercise physiologist or like a physiotherapist. They can provide like analysis, treatment, rehabilitation, and probably like exercise programs and frameworks to get you back up and running, I guess. If you want like self-diagnose, I guess, then you can also like do the RICE protocol, which is like rest, ice, compression, elevation. Get like an actual massage or do some like self-massage, like foam rolling or like using massage ball. I guess you can also do some light stretching throughout the day and definitely reduce the train load. That might mean you have to cut back on how far or how often you run and like reduce the volume and intensity of your workouts. And remember, you don't lose that much fitness if you take a few days off. And that brings me to my final point. If you do get injured, then try not to be too hard on yourself and also be patient during the recovery process. The idea is to be reasonable and smart about managing the injury. That way we can get back in shape and keep moving forward, I guess. But yeah, that's pretty much all to say for now. I've probably missed a few things. By no means is what I've been saying like a definitive list of any kind. I'm not an expert in these kind of things. I'm pretty much just saying what's on top of my head and just getting out here, I guess. I feel like if you really enjoy the sport and you want to like go farther or like be in it for a long run, you really got to be proactive with managing injuries and dealing with it, I guess. It can be quite tough sometimes, but it is sort of part of the sport, so yeah. Hopefully this kind of stuff helps you, you know. Other than that, thanks for watching, have fun running out there and have a nice day. Bye.